Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished speakers, fellow colleagues, dear audience, let me warmly welcome you all at today's high-level event of the Monetary Club, one of the most valuable initiatives of the Magyar Nemzeti Bank, the Central Bank of Hungary. My name is Melitta Gyudi, and I am honored to be your host today. The Magyar Nemzeti Bank established the Monetary Club with the aim of exploring the most important and timely topics of our everyday lives. Today, we have the second event under the theme, The Future of Education, the Education of the Future, with the goal of discussing the importance of the much-needed transformation in education, guided by innovation. As our world transforms at an unprecedented pace, the role of education is more crucial than ever in order to foster creativity, adaptability, and critical thinking to prepare students for new challenges. There is no doubt that education has the most transformational potential to shape a fairer and more sustainable future. Our guest speakers from the Arizona State University and the Cintana education will give lectures on the rapidly changing world of education. This will be followed by an interactive panel discussion focusing on the most topical questions in the subject. It is my pleasure to introduce our esteemed guest speaker, Dr. Chris Howard, Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer at the Arizona State University. Dr. Howard, please come on stage.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Nice to see you all. My name is Dr. Chris Howard. I got in here last night, so if I fall asleep, my apologies. But I've had some good Hungarian coffee, so I'm wide awake. I came here 31 years ago. The place has changed a bit. I was studying at Oxford University as a Rhodes Scholar, a young lieutenant in the United States Air Force, and I took a tour through Central Europe, including Warsaw, including Prague. But Budapest was my favorite place. And remains such. Delighted to be here representing Arizona State University. My wife, Barbara Howard, joins me. We could give her a round of applause. It doesn't matter if you're from America or if you're from Hungary, you know to say nice things about your spouse. That is very, very important. So I want to say again, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor and a privilege to be speaking to you today at METU, a university powered by Arizona State University as of late. Under the visionary leadership of our president, Dr. Michael Crow, ASU, or Arizona State University, has become a beacon of innovation and impact in higher education. I'm proud to be here representing ASU on his behalf, continuing our mission to push the boundaries of what a university can achieve. What an incredible investment the government and the people of Hungary have made in higher education. I've so enjoyed speaking with your colleagues the last couple of hours about the wonderful work you're doing, not just in Hungary with your universities, your public service institute, your university, what you're doing in Vienna, a university you purchased in Vienna, the think tank you have in Brussels. It's really quite impressive. And I'm inspired by your commitment to cultivating the next generation of leaders here in Hungary and across the globe. This thing works. So there we go. Now, you know, METU has this great story on its website about Lucas, an international relations student from Hungary who spent this summer studying at ASU. Now, I don't advise anyone coming to ASU in the summer. It's quite warm. That is what a partnership is all about, transforming the lives of students such as Lucas. We are just at the beginning. Ladies and gentlemen, ASU believes in the power of inclusion. As a new American university, or what we call a fifth wave university, we are guided by a revolutionary charter that sets us apart from other institutions. Most notably, our charter at ASU states, we are measured by whom it is measured by whom it excludes, but measured by whom it includes rather than whom it excludes. Said it another way, ASU is a university that judges itself by whom we include in their outcomes as opposed to whom we exclude. Now, I mentioned before, I went to Oxford University. Before that, I went to Harvard Business School. I serve on the Board of Overseers at Harvard, a fine institution. Not as good as Arizona State, but very good university. I understand Harvard's going to be coming here soon, and MIT as well. Very good institutions. But the way they judge themselves is to have many, many, many people apply and take only a select few. Excellence is marked this way. You take many, many, many people to apply, and you only accept a few. So it's exclusionary. But we believe at Arizona State University you can be excellent and inclusive. Why? Because we have to be. You cannot only, as the Brits would do years ago, educate 3% of the population at Oxford and Cambridge. The other 97% could go work in the coal mines, and you could run an empire that way. It's impossible to be important on the world stage if you do not spend your time trying to take education and pedagogy and push it to the people. And I'll talk about how we've done that at Arizona State University in just a second. Now, we are a public university, and with that comes a public mission. We are dedicated to creating knowledge and driving innovation that benefits the public good. As a member of the prestigious Association of American Universities, ASU is part of an elite group of research institutions driving nearly $1 billion in research expenditures annually. Again, inclusive excellence at scale. We're not just big, but we're also amongst the best. There's 68 universities in this group, and we are the newest member. We're very proud of that. We deliver high-quality education to students who might otherwise be excluded from higher education, ensuring that everyone, regardless of background, has access to transformative learning opportunities. You see, ladies and gentlemen, too often universities believe they must choose between excellence and opportunity. At ASU, we have proven that you need not sacrifice one for the other. Choosing both excellence and opportunity means that our mission goes beyond traditional boundaries. We seek to overcome geographic limits that prevent communities in the US and around the world from accessing education and engaging in the global innovation economy. By leveraging technology, we are making this vision a reality. ASU has been recognized reportedly for its innovation. We're number one. Number one for sustainability and global impact with the Times Higher Education ranking, and is a #1 university for both sustainability and global impact. So you can see here by this slide, 10 years in a row, we have been ranked #1 for innovation. Now, how have we succeeded? Technology has been a critical component, as I mentioned before. ASU was among the first universities to develop online degree programs that rival in-person instruction. Through our online programs, we've reached students who traditionally had limited access to higher education. We also have helped workers overcome financial barriers by partnering with companies like Starbucks to provide high-quality degree programs for working adults. At ASU, we don't just deliver education, we transform lives. We have 100,000 students online, ladies and gentlemen. 25,000 of them are Starbucks employees. That was a program created by our president, Michael Crow, and Howard Schultz. I was talking to my colleagues earlier, some of your colleagues earlier, about how we're trying to get undifferentiated outcomes for our students, whether they go online or whether they go on campus with us. And I was reminded of two wonderful stories. Who watched the Olympics? You watched the Olympics, great. I think the Hungarian swimmer who did so well actually is an ASU student, so we can both take credit for that. Marchand, the wonderful French swimmer who won 4 gold medals, is an ASU student. Interestingly enough, he is so busy now, he won't be able to continue his studies back at Arizona State campus on ground, but he's going to finish his degree online in computer science. That's how undifferentiated our outcomes are. And some of you all may have heard of the gazillionaire, billionaire Elon Musk. You've heard of Elon Musk? You know him? Yeah? He's from South Africa. My wife is also from South Africa. She's not as rich, but she's much more pretty than he is, but she's not as wealthy as he is. Elon Musk has a company called Neuralink, which does the fascinating brain surgery implants. He's working with an institution in Phoenix, Arizona called the Barrow Neurological Institute, and one of the top neuro institutes in the world. I'm on the board of their foundation, and the surgery was performed at that institute in Phoenix, both the neural link surgeries. So he came there for them. He didn't do the surgery himself, but he did come there. And what's interesting is that the neurosurgeons will tell you that they go in and they make the hole, but there's a robot operator, there's an operator who operates the robot who places the actual chip in. Ladies and gentlemen, that student, that person, excuse me, that employee is an ASU online student. He's out of Austin, he's a former Navy person, was a mechanic, and he's the one who put the Neuralink in. He's done 2 or 3 of these already. So what I'm saying here is that if we're gonna scale education and have excellence, he's an electrical engineering major online. Marshawn is a computer science engineering major online. We think that METU and the other Hungarian universities, as you scale and grow and do what you're doing to be such an important university in the center of Europe, that online education has to be a part of that in order to scale. Now, today is the largest university in the US with more than 181,000 students currently enrolled. Of these, 95,000 are taking advantage of our online degree programs, 2 of whom I mentioned a moment ago. But we are not stopping there. In 2019, ASU partnered with the TPG Rise Fund to launch InStride, a learning services company designed to help adult learners, whether through degree programs, upskilling, or reskilling in professional development. This effort was recognized in 2022 by EdTech Breakthrough, which honored InStride with its Corporate Learning Solution of the Year award. The Rise Fund, by the way, is kind of a big deal. Almost $20 billion in assets and home of the world's largest private markets impact investing platforms. Now, you all are bankers, so I know you love money, so this should be a good thing. The important thing about us accessing capital markets, private venture capital, et cetera, to advance our mission, I think is going to be the corner of the realm. They said that, the French diplomat once said that war is too important for the generals. Education is too important just for the academicians. We need thoughtful institutions across civil society in order to make sure that we are successful in offering pedagogy at a large scale. Now, just recently, ASU President Michael Crow shared a story about an Uber ride he took where he struck up a conversation with his driver. She told him that thanks to ASU and the Uber partnership, she was studying neuroscience online, something she had never thought possible. We have an agreement with Uber. We have about 2,000 Uber employees that also go to ASU online. So she explained that before this opportunity, obtaining a higher education degree seemed out of reach. But through ASU's innovative online programs, her life had been transformed. This partnership is one example of how ASU is breaking barriers and making education accessible to people from all walks of life and changing lives in the process. And yet the promise of online learning extends far beyond accessibility. It's not just about delivering classes across borders or time zones. With the rise of artificial intelligence, we now have the opportunity to personalize learning, adapting education to meet the unique needs of each learner. We're entering a new era, one that was once confined to the realm of science fiction. In Neil Stephenson's 1995 novel, The Diamond Age, a young girl named Nell rises out of poverty thanks to a revolutionary educational device called the primer. Nell not only overcomes her own powerlessness, she harnesses this technology to help others do the same. While that story may have been fiction, its themes are strikingly relevant today. What makes the Diamond Age prescient is that it foresaw that technology and advanced education were widening the gulf between the haves and the have-nots. The primer was not meant for girls and boys like Nell. No, it was developed for the children of the wealthy and the powerful. But it didn't have to be that way. Remember, we do not have to choose between excellence and opportunity. We are now at a moment where technology can bridge the gap between the haves and the have-nots. At ASU, we are committed to using artificial intelligence to foster excellence, excellence, accessibility, and impact. Our groundbreaking partnership with OpenAI, the creators of ChatGPT, is a testament to this. Through this collaboration, ASU has access to ChatGPT Enterprise, which we are using to enhance learning, advance research, and improve business operations. In February, we launched the AI Innovation Challenge, encouraging faculty and staff to explore ways in which ChatGPT Enterprise can shape the future of education, research, and of work. The response was overwhelming. More than 500 proposals were submitted, with more than 300 projects active across the ASU public enterprise. And by the way, we have about 7,000 faculty members and about 30,000 employees. Examples abound. A professor of German created a GPT called Language Buddy to help students taking language courses online practice their speaking skills. That actually was featured in Nature magazine, that creation of hers. Another AI-driven tool that has been developed under this partnership is Behavioral Sim, which helps behavioral health students learn enhanced counseling techniques via role-playing that will teach them what to anticipate in real-world environments. Ladies and gentlemen, we're just getting warmed up. As we embrace AI, we remain committed to its ethical use, including the protection of intellectual property, and our partnership with AI is structured to ensure just that. We believe that AI should augment the work of professors, not replace them. As entrepreneur, podcaster, and NYU school professor Scott Galloway has said, I love Scott's haircut, by the way, I know him. We got a similar haircut to that guy. Scott says this: you will not lose your job to AI. You will lose your job to someone who knows how to use AI. And we're very proud of our Cintana partners that we just did a prompt engineering workshop for our Cintana partners across the world, our other affiliates out there, to help them understand how to use AI to deliver pedagogy in an ethical way. Our role is to ensure that our students, faculty, and staff know how to harness AI for the greater good. At ASU, we call this principled innovation, placing character and values at the core of everything we do. We also want to share this knowledge with our partners. If technology is one key to our global impact, partnership is another. We do not seek to hoard the innovations that have transformed ASU, but rather to share them with institutions around the world. By working together, we can expand access to education and innovation for all. This is why we launched the Cintana Alliance in 2019. The Cintana Alliance is a global network of universities committed to expanding access to higher education and spreading innovation. METU is an integral part of this network, and we are proud to work alongside you. We are proud to call you our partner. Thank you again for this opportunity. We look forward to continue our collaboration in advancing our shared missions and making a high quality education available to all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Howard, for this engaging and thought-provoking lecture. Continuing in this spirit, I am delighted to invite on stage Dr. Rick Shangraw, President of Cintana, Professor of Practice at the Arizona State University and founding President of American University of Technology in Tashkent. Dr. Shangraw, I would like to ask you to stay on stage for the panel discussion after the lecture. And now the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. So exciting to be here. My first time in Budapest. I visited 40 countries around the globe. I can't believe I missed Hungary over my last 65 years of my life, but I did, and I'm sorry about that. I will be returning for sure. I'm going to talk today about a little bit different topic. I know you've heard before, we had some speakers a couple months ago that came in talking about higher education. We just heard from Dr. Howard about some of the roles of technology. I wanted to focus on an interesting intersection. When I heard that METU was, overseen by the central bank, it's a very unique relationship. And so I began thinking about, how do financial institutions interact with higher education institutions? Now, look, I understand for sure that you are not running banks. You oversee banks, you set policy, you have interest policies, you all have all sorts of roles as a central banker. But nevertheless, there is that connectivity. And so as I go around the world to our institutions that we collaborate with, these are the 28 universities that are part of the Cintana Alliance that Dr. Howard just mentioned. You'll see right in the center of that is Metropolitan University. But I do have this conversation with many of our universities, and that is, how do they expand and build their partnerships outside of the walls of universities. And one thing that they talk about a lot is what can we do with financial institutions? So again, while you're not bankers, traditional bankers, leading banks and credit unions and so forth, I still think there's an important role to understand what is that direct intersection. Of course, there's a huge indirect intersection of education and the economy, right? And that's been studied for years. There's lots of research on there. Of course, the research is generally positive that promoting higher education within the country helps overall growth and success of the countries. And I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not an economist, and you wouldn't want to hear my thoughts on that. But I am going to talk about this direct intersection. I sat on a bank board when I was running companies in the United States, and I've had a lot of intersections with banks and financial institutions at Arizona State University. And so I'll be giving you mostly a U.S. perspective on these relationships, because that's what I'm most familiar with, but I think it certainly can be translated into how it might operate in other countries. So 5 key areas of intersections: talent, training, services, student financing, and technology. So these are the 5 areas that I find to be most directly intersecting between higher education institutions and financial institutions. So let's take the first one, talent. This is the easy one, right? Universities train students. Those students are hired by banks, by the central bank, by financial institutions. It's a very important part of the role of higher education, is to provide outstanding talent to the banking sector, to financial institutions. Of course, there's a second part of that, and that is financial institutions, in return, provide co-op opportunities, internships for students. So there's an equal role between universities providing students and financial institutions providing opportunities for students to understand financial institutions as they go through their studies. This one's pretty easy. So let's talk about training. Training is also sort of obvious, but worth talking about. First of all, financial institutions collaborate with universities. They often help with curriculum development within universities. They help to advise universities. They sit on advisory boards for universities to make sure that the students that are trained, right, have the right kind of training as they move through their university experience. But universities also provide upskilling, and you just heard from Dr. Howard this work that ASU is doing in terms of upskilling students and employees in particular, and those opportunities now are growing. It's no longer the case that universities just give away accredited degrees. They now are doing short courses, they're doing certificates, they're doing badges, they're doing all sorts of things to upskill particularly employees. Services. So this is one, I oversaw the ASU Foundation when I was at ASU. That was one of my jobs. And I certainly relied upon the banking sector, financial institutions for advice on how to invest the money of the university. University has about a $1.5 billion endowment, which is their long-term investment, but there's also very much short-term investment. You gotta remember, at the university, it's certainly in the US and most places we operate around the globe, they collect the money up front before the student goes to the university. So they have this opportunity to do something with that money on a short-term basis before they expend it over the long term. Second, of course, there's capital financing by financial institutions. They fund buildings, they fund investments in other opportunities. These capital investments are critical to the success of universities, and increasingly we're seeing a lot more public-private partnerships in terms of capital investment. Arizona State, for example, has not yet paid for capital to build a dormitory, a residence hall. It's all been privately financed, 30-year deals where ASU guarantees a certain number of beds will be occupied in that dormitory, in that residence hall. That goes back to the company that came in and built the facility and then has some operating oversight of that facility. And then, of course, there's student banking services. And this has become very popular in the United States, about banks providing direct support to students at universities through partnerships. So how does it work in the United States? There are about 449 universities that have a specific banking relationship, partnership with a bank or a credit union. About 653,000 students are banked through these partnerships. Does it work? It's a long-term investment for banks. It takes about 5 years for them to get the return back on the investment they make in providing those services to students who generally are not taking out private loans, or they're not putting a lot of their own money into the bank. So it's a 5-year payoff period. It's this long-term. And the big thing there, of course, is scale. You can't do it with very small universities. It's just not going to work. So it's really been much more effective in large universities. You heard the numbers from Dr. Howard about ASU. ASU does have a specific banking relationship with a partner. And these numbers actually come from that partner saying, here's what they expect from that banking relationship. And they paid a lot of money to get that banking relationship, but again, it's a long-term payoff for them. Student financing, of course, this is a big topic around the globe, particularly as more countries begin to move into private education away from public education. And they're doing that because the governments, as you can imagine, can't continue to build and supply the public universities. They have to rely upon the private sector for education. And so once you rely upon the private sector for education, it's tuition driven. And when it's tuition driven, you got to make sure that the students have the money to pay the tuition, right? And this has become a huge both challenge and opportunity around the globe about how you put in place those lending programs. The United States has a long history of having those lending programs in place. Most of the universities we work with around the globe, there are no state-driven or government-driven lending programs, and it becomes a challenge for many students to pay for private education. So these partnerships are expanding. There's some new products on the marketplace. One of them, which is really fascinating, income share agreements. You have a student come in and you say to them, here's the deal. We'll pay for your education, and when you get out and get a job, we're going to take 5% of your salary for the next 10 years. So it's an income share agreement with students. There's a lot of complications there. How do you guarantee the student's going to pay that money and so forth? But nevertheless, it's one of the programs in place. We certainly expect more students to move around the globe and try to get education in other countries. Hungary is a fantastic, particularly Budapest is a great place to attract international students. And we're seeing that number growing to over 9 million, close to 10 million students that will be traveling around the world gaining education from other countries. And they're going to need loans. And the challenge is, if you go to the United States, for example, the cost of education in the United States is just ridiculous. It's almost gotten to a point where most students cannot afford it and are challenging this whole model of, is there a return on investment? You can see in most of the countries we operate, the average annual tuition fee is close to $4,000. And so if you have a student here in Hungary that says, I want to go to the US, they're going to need help. They're going to need probably a loan or some other support if they don't have personal financial resources within their family. So we're building relationships with specific programs around the globe that will lend money to students to study in other countries. They're very interesting programs. They're relatively new. There's no collateral. They have a high interest rate, but it's fixed. They're low fees. It's all on a digital platform. And you're going to see more of these products out in the marketplace globally, particularly. So technology. Technology is a piece that we heard from Dr. Howard about, where ASU is doing a lot of work in artificial intelligence. I'm not going to talk about the AI side of it. He covered that pretty well. But certainly in terms of technology, universities team up with financial institutions, and particularly with central banks, to help do research and to develop policy position statements. And then, of course, there's the whole fintech boom. And the fintech boom is interesting because it's not only around cybersecurity, AI, blockchain, which I'll talk about in a minute, but it's also around behavioral sciences, about how you get customers of banks to be trained and appreciate financial systems and how they can be participating in the banking sector. And that's also an area that's growing rapidly. We have a partner university in Kazakhstan, in Almaty, Kazakhstan. I was walking through their building a couple of days ago, and I came across their fintech lab. This is a 3,000-person, mainly business-oriented university in Kazakhstan, and they've got a whole dedicated MasterCard fintech lab, which I found to be fascinating. I'm going to finish up the talk by just talking about some really interesting work that Arizona State University is doing. They have decided to use the blockchain as a foundational piece of tracking skills and learning of students over time. And you can see that all the learning that goes on, K-12, undergraduate, informal learning, experiential learning, can be put onto, and the micro-credentials can be put onto the blockchain. And then having access to that blockchain comes through an app, through a digital app. And of course, this should resonate very well with all of you. This is something the banking sector has been doing for some time. I don't know if you thought about the analogy about how it can be now translated to the higher education sector. So this system, this platform that ASU is developing collects credentials in one safe repository on the blockchain. And then it allows you to connect to other services that might be available. For example, if you graduate from the university and end up with an employer and you take a skills-based professional development course, you could connect into that and have that information also put onto the blockchain. And then you are given the opportunity to make sure that you have some control over what goes on to the blockchain. So there's a consent element to this, sometimes for privacy purposes, sometimes for ensuring that what's on the blockchain is accurate. And then when you're ready, you can push out those credentials to your phone, and you can either share those credentials looking at yourself, or you can share those credentials with an employer, with an organization you might be working with. You can share it with your next university where you might be getting a graduate degree, and it's all shareable. So the interesting piece here is that universities are starting to move into areas that you in the financial sector have been very familiar with, but the thought of having a blockchain-driven repository of everything you've learned over time that goes with you as you move from K-12 through university to your employer to the rest of your life is really fascinating and something that we're going to see a lot more of. And ASU is really spending a lot of time pioneering these activities. So I hope you enjoyed sort of the thinking, to sort of sit back for a minute as a central bank and think about, well, how do financial institutions really interact with directly with universities? And I think, again, I think it's something that we're going to see more of. It's going to be expanded, and I think it's going to be an important part of the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shangraw, for this insightful session. After the remarkable speeches, we are now moving to the panel discussion, focusing on the future aspects of education. During the session, our distinguished speakers, panelists, will share their views on the future of education, the education of the future. I am pleased to welcome on stage Dr. Zoltán Dubéczi, Chief Advisor to the Governor of the Magyar Nemzeti Bank, as the moderator of this panel discussion. And let me also introduce our distinguished speakers. Joining today, Dr. Chris Howard, Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer at the Arizona State University. Welcome back on stage. Welcome again, Dr. Rick Shangraw, President of Cintana, Professor of Practice at the Arizona State University and founding President of American University of Technology in Tashkent. And Dr. László Szabó, founder of the Hungarian Innovation Hub. After the panel discussion, we will continue with a Q&A session, so I encourage everyone to take this opportunity and ask our wonderful panelists. And now I would like to give the floor to Dr. Dubéczi and our distinguished speakers. Thank you.
Dear colleagues, dear President, thank you for the opportunity. I'd like to start with a question about the association itself. Yesterday we talked about that this association is a global association, and this is the biggest, so a giant Association of Universities under the umbrella of Cintana and the ASU, and 28 universities involved and more than 300,000 students involved, either online or in person. In Europe, we have a similar initiative by the European Commission. That means the Association of European Universities, but it's on the European level, and it's typically a top-down approach. So the European Commission defined the goals, the budget, and so on, and also deeply regulated by the Commission. So this is different. This is bigger, this is wider, this is deeper, this is global. And my question is about that. What is the main driving force in behind that you started with this activity? What are the main motivations behind this giant plan?
I'll get started, Rick, and then you pick it up from there. So, as I said in my talk, we believe in inclusive excellence at scale at Arizona State University. Our charter is about inclusion and about excellence and about scale. And in order to do that, we could not do that in the traditional way. For the tens of millions of people that need to be educated over the next 30, 40 years, you have to build something like 30 universities every week for the next 10 years to keep up with it. And going off and building even branch campuses, which you see quite often with universities where they go off and have a branch campus, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're truly going to put a dent in it, as we say in America, if you're actually going to move it, you have to come up with something innovative. So the first thing you do is you go to an innovative partner, very entrepreneurial minded, which I'll let Rick speak to in a second. I came out of Laureate and became Cintana later on. At one point, the previous institution had 1 million students around the world, the largest private holder of universities around the world. Partnering with them and their leadership, their zeitgeist, with our charter, our technology, we came together to create this network called Cintana. You've mentioned the numbers now, but we're hoping to get to 1 million students in the next 10 years or so, and we think a significant number of those will finish their degrees either online or on ground at Arizona State University, getting dual degrees both from the local university and for the university, Arizona State University, which is really powerful, and I'll stop here. You're really, truly creating a global citizen. And one thing I've been struck about my time in Budapest the last day or so is just the cosmopolitan, internationalist sort of mindset here. If you're going to have people that do that, you need people that are trained and educated in multiple places and multiple spaces. So we think we're off to a good start here, but I'll let Rick pick it up from there.
Yeah, I'm going to sort of get down to the practical level. And so universities around the globe love to go visit other universities around the globe. So there'll be a chief operating officer, executive vice president of ASU that will come to France and meet a university in France. They'll have a nice dinner. They'll tour the campus. The next day they'll get up, there'll be the French flag, there'll be the US flag, there'll be a big table, there'll be photographers, right? And they'll sit there and they'll sign an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, right? Everybody shakes hands, right? And then they all go home and nothing happens, right? Right? Well, one good thing's happened. They put the logo on their website saying we have a partnership, right? And you see these websites now, university websites that have 50 logos of other universities. Here are our international partners. And then I'm such a jerk. I always go and say, what are you doing with that one? And they'll go, oh, yeah, it's really hard. We're not doing much with that one, right? And so from a practical perspective, there needed to be a different model about how to connect a US university with universities around the globe. And so this challenge that US universities have grew out in the Cintana company itself. It's a private company, for-profit company, grew out of a need to find this partnership with a very well reputed, well-known US university. And the result is this combination now of a team. We have now 100 people around the globe. We grew out of a very successful, as Chris mentioned, very successful private university network called Laureate Education. Our leadership came from there. So there was a lot of experience working around the globe. And our job at Cintana is to be the global implementation partner for Arizona State University. Arizona State University has a 20% equity stake in Cintana Education, so we're tied financially, corporately together. And when ASU now wants to go out and work with a partner in Hungary, we work collaboratively with ASU to identify a great partner. We found one here in Hungary with METU. And then our team comes in and does two things. First, we come in and help with the ASU partnership, help with dual degree programs, bringing in curriculum from ASU as necessary, collaborative research projects, faculty exchange program, faculty development program, student exchange program, comprehensive partnership. Our team helps with that. And then our team also helps on the business side. We have experts in how do you better market at higher education? How do you improve enrollment activities? How do you work on getting better rankings and rating and accreditation and licensing activities and issues? The business side of the university, we have a specialist on our team. And so that combination of bringing a world-class university together with the business needs of a university is what Cintana evolved out of. And here we are today in Hungary.
Thank you. Ambassador Szabó, I'd like to ask you your personal experiences. So we are working together with Arizona State University just since, I don't know, last 2 years. But you have more personal experience since you visited the university itself as an ambassador a few years ago. So you started your relationship with the university earlier. What are the main advantages and the main practical first wins inside this alliance for Hungary and for the Metropolitan University?
Well, let me start with a story, okay? First of all, let me greet my former colleague, Ambassador Sapari. So the number of former American ambassadors has just doubled now with this announcement. We actually built an innovation center in Washington, D.C. This is the first of its kind. It's called BPDC. In a funny way, it refers to Budapest and Washington, D.C., but the resolution of this abbreviation is Business Promotion and Development Campus. And our goal was, when we created the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, we were trying to create a platform for Hungarian innovation to reach the American market. And obviously, there's a lot of Hungarians here. We know that we are brilliant at inventing things, and we suck at commercializing things. So I think the Hungarian ingenuity with the American practicality of commercialization and sales is really a great, great combination of powers. And when I had an easy informal discussion about 2 years ago with Governor Matolcsi, and he mentioned that he learned about this innovation center back in Washington, D.C., still operates actually, and why don't we try and build something along those lines at the Budapest Metropolitan University. So we went on, and there's a few colleagues here in the rows who joined in discussion, and this idea has grown very quickly. Within 2 months, basically, we created the Hungarian Innovation Hub, which basically serves the other end of the scale. So basically, we teach entrepreneurship for students. And in the meantime, I learned that the Budapest Metropolitan University is already working with this deal with ASU and Cintana. So obviously, I got very excited because kind of combining forces with the most innovative university of the United States is like, wow. Not even mentioning that the number of students that attend the Arizona State University is about half of all university students of Hungary, okay? We have approximately 280,000 students in higher education in Hungary. So obviously, this is a comparable size. We initiated this innovation center, and we have quite successfully launched the first semester last September, and I'm very glad that approximately 80 students created like 15 early stage startups. We're very proud of that. And some of them have already been creating interest on the US market. Now, when we visited ASU, I think it was January this year, earlier this year, first of all, the weather is beautiful in Arizona in winter, so it's quite refreshing to go from gray Budapest to sunny Arizona. I was really, really impressed. When I learned that they have approximately, tell me if I'm wrong, about 2,000 online courses that are available for students. Yeah. It's an unbelievable way to promote knowledge. And since the democratization of knowledge in the world is happening, is changing, and COVID amplified that way of commercialization of knowledge and democratization of knowledge, I believe the ASU is much, much ahead of us from that perspective. On the other hand, taking the Budapest Metropolitan University, this is probably, well, this is the largest private university of Hungary, and also probably the most flexible of those. So there's not much bureaucracy there, and it's quite in the culture that you don't ask for permission beforehand, you ask for an apology afterwards. And I think this works very well. So it's quick, it's lean, and it's happening. Everything is happening. So when I saw the size, I just visited one of the 5 campuses actually, and this was actually, and Thunderbird. So 2 of those. And it's really amazing, the professionalism, the preparedness, the openness and the friendliness of the whole environment at the ASU is quite impressive. And I believe, I don't know, it's obviously, you cannot compare the size, but in terms of flexibility and openness to develop together some things, that's beautiful. So from the practical point of view, having access to this wonderful selection of courses, the interchangeability of students, of knowledge, is a fantastic opportunity, not only for the Budapest Metropolitan University and its students, but for Hungary itself. So I'm very excited.
Thank you. One more question about the alliance. Yesterday we also talked about that you are very lucky that you gain a lot of deep experience in different regions, in different universities, because universities are very, very diverse all over the world, even in Europe. But if we see your map, you have partner universities from Australia to Peru, from Uzbekistan to Central Europe. And I also asked this question from Doug Becker and Julia Rosen. On the 2nd of May, we had this first series of Future of Education, Education of the Future conference. So what are the first experiences comparing the different regions, different universities? It's a very difficult task to deal with. 28 different legislative procedures, different working habits, totally different way of life, totally different regions. So what are the first main experiences?
Yeah, I'll kick it off, Rick, then you take it from there. So what I was struck by in my travels to these ASU Cintana institutions is actually how similar the thirst and quench for knowledge and intellectual development just is. So take, for example, 2 years ago, I was with Doug Becker and Michael Crow and a guy named Jim O'Brien out at, who's Michael's chief of staff and vice president, out in Galala University near Cairo. And the students there were not as good as the students at METU. I mean, that's not, no, they were good, but they were so intent on improving Egypt, improving their families, improving their lives, leveraging technology. It was heartening. Michael left just bowled over by what he had seen. We went work with some graphic design folks. We looked at their medical school. A group of deans and other faculty members had been there maybe the week before and had just really been, again, bowled over by the level of sophistication and desire to advance intellectually, right? The only other thing I would also add is that the neat thing about ASU and Cintana, empowering by ASU, getting faculty members and staff members, deans, et cetera, to talk about and where appropriate, coalesce around a common curriculum that we've honed over the years and worked out the idiosyncrasies, helps them accelerate their process. And we have what we call it is global link. So as you finish your degree, you can do 2 years or 3 years in your ACI, your ASU, Cintana institution, your last year, your last 2 years, or your master's degree, either at ASU or online at ASU, these students are coming over now and they're excelling. They are extraordinarily well prepared. There's a level of consistency, but they're also bringing some diversity of thought because they're coming from so far afield. So it's been a very, very good process, and I do appreciate the differences. Maybe Rick will speak more to those, but what has been most interesting is the commonality, the thirst to problem solve, and then wrapping that around the common tech stack that we've created, as well as a curriculum that we think, it's not that our curriculum are completely inflexible, but it gives you a really, really good head start.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And again, I'll get on to sort of the more practical side of that question, which is what are similarities and differences? And I was struck, I was in Kosovo a couple days ago, meeting with the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs. And the conversation we were having was, can Kosovo do a better job with visa applications? Because they want to internationalize. They want to have students coming to Kosovo, right? And we see this all around the globe. Every one of the universities we work with wants more international students. It's usually a mandate from the national government. Sometimes it's just good practice to, to diversify your student base. And so I get here, and guess what one of the issues is here? Streamlining the visa process so you can have more international students, right? So we find these similarities, right, between countries in terms of how can they open up access, as Chris has been talking about, making higher education more accessible. And you got to start with some really practical things. And if students can't get a visa to come to Hungary, or can't get a visa to come to Kosovo, or can't get a visa to come to the United States, as Chris is working with Ambassador Garcetti in India on that topic, then you're going to have a hard time internationalizing. And so we see that as a similarity across a lot of our institutions.
You mentioned the talent approach. That is very, very different in Arizona State University and, for example, University of Oxford. So they, or Harvard, they attract just the best elite 1% or less. And Arizona State University is more inclusive. And my question is about that. Do you have at Arizona State University special programs for the best, for the talents, for the 1%?
So a couple things. Like I say, inclusive excellence at scale. There is an excellence part, and I will speak to the excellence part. One of the things I didn't mention, in addition to the 180,000 students between online and on ground for graduate and postgraduate degrees, we have another 42,000 K through 12 primary school to high school students, right? And what we call ASU Prep Digital. We also operate 12 charter schools in the Phoenix area with about 3,500 to almost 4,000 students that we operate as primary schools and high schools. We have on our campus, on our ASU West Valley campus, it's the Herberger School, and it is a school for gifted and talented. It's almost like if you ever saw the movie The X-Men, Professor X's special school university or special school for super smart people. It literally is the best and brightest young people, if not in the world, at least in our community, that go and have a very wonderful, bespoke experience for the best and brightest. And there are, I don't know, maybe wouldn't be 1,000 students, but it'd be hundreds of students in that program. At the university level, we have something called Barrett the Honors College. And the Honors College is 7,000 students that could have gone to have the same credentials as a student going to Oxford, Cambridge, NYU, Abu Dhabi, et cetera, et cetera. They literally are the best and brightest students. We routinely have more Fulbright scholars coming out of that program than any other university in the country. We have, a few years ago, a Rhodes Scholar, a Truman Scholar, a Marshall Scholar, and a Gates Scholar, one of only 4 public universities in the United States to have all 4 of those scholarships represented by one place. So within this wonderful big sea, or world of inclusivity, and by the way, our students, we have rigor. We just choose to meet students where they are, to take them where they need to go. We have another 7,000 students that are sort of the top tier, and another almost 1,000 that are doing the Honors College curriculum, Barrett the Honors College, online. So about 8,000 or so I'll just say two quick stories about that. One, in terms of even our ASU online Barry College students, I was at the Mayo Clinic, which is a very important hospital in the States, and someone was doing this procedure. They were looking at my heart. I do have a heart, and it's okay. But the person that was looking at it said that she had, she was a fourth-year medical school student, and I said, well, tell me your background. She said, well, I was working in a restaurant as a manager, and I wanted to make a change. So she got an ASU online, because that was she couldn't just go to full time. She had too much life, family, etc. And she was looking at my heart and taking pictures of it. So that's the kind of quality we're talking about. The last thing I'm going to mention is I spoke to a group of investors when I first came to ASU, maybe within the first 6 months. And it was venture capitalists and private equity folks and bankers, investment bankers from the Phoenix area, or actually from Arizona writ large. And this one gentleman got up. He's from Phoenix. He went to the University of Arizona, which is the other university, not nearly as good as ours, down the road. And he stood up and he says, Dr. Howard, I really appreciate your comments about being inclusive and excellent. But do you think that you are diluting the brand by being so inclusive? I said, listen, we have 7,000, almost 8,000 students at our honors college. Just choose from them if you like. If that's what you want to do, I mean, that's larger than Harvard, larger than Stanford's undergraduate population. We're a rather large elite university inside of a big university. So we have all that, and we bring it to the forefront, and we've had great success.
Ambassador Szabó, there are a lot of talent programs inside the central bank approaching including or involving different talents from different universities, of course, not just from metropolitan universities, but all Hungarian universities. And all of the, for example, Hungarian best students in the field of economics are awarded by, been awarded by scholarship of the central bank. So it's we can say that currently the best students in the field of economics are central bank scholarship holders, hundreds of them. And my question is about that. These talent programs in Hungary and in the Metropolitan University, so it can be improved with this relationship. So can we extend these programs using, of course, the innovation hub as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. I don't think we don't reward innovation and motivation enough, to be honest. What I have seen in the past few years, that there's an incredible energy and creativity in these kids. What we do at the Hungarian Innovation Hub is that we invite kids who want to learn how to create a startup for themselves. They bring their ideas, and we ask them to create 3 to 5 member groups. They decide themselves who brought the best idea, and we help them to create a startup from that idea. It's very simple, very simple. But if you put a reward at the end, that if you are in the top 3 teams, you might be able to establish your own company, and really, without financial risk, you can start doing something with that. This is fabulous. And I was actually very surprised how big waves we've created with that, joining on the great efforts of the Hungarian National Innovation Agency also, that is doing the Startup University course as well, the Hungarian Startup University program. I think there's more and more of those programs that help to create this vibe about entrepreneurship. Hungary really needs entrepreneurs. We really need a lot of startups, far more startups than we have today, and hopefully those startups will grow up to become SMEs and major companies later on. And the know-how, what ASU can bring to us is incredible, because they are 2 or 3 decades ahead of us, clearly. And the know-how of how to build your program, how to create your value proposition for the customers, how to identify the customers, how to bring value to the market, and how to make a better world, basically. That's a big deal. And this is where Hungarian universities in general fail. So we love science, we provide a lot of Nobel laureates for the world, but most of this knowledge is put on the shelf in a book. and then we jump on the next research. So research is not invention. Invention happens when you do something with that invention, when you start making use of it and when you start making a better world. So I think along those lines, the more we do, the better. It's not enough. We have to make a lot of effort to improve that innovation ecosystem in Hungary. And I believe who else could help us better reaching that than the most innovative university of the United States.
Professor Shangraw, you talked about the interaction and intersections in between financial institutions and universities. And you had a slide about financing the studies itself and about student loans also. My question is about that. I read a lot of articles about the US student loan system. This is a very hot topic and a very interesting topic even for economists, so they are always analyzing the situation. What do you think? Is this student loan system sustainable for a longer term? Just asking it because I read an article a few months ago that the US government just canceled a few 100,000 loans for those who can't afford to pay back.
Great question. And a big topic in the United States, big topic internationally, really, and that is how involved should the national government and state governments be in helping to finance student higher education? In many respects, the loan programs in the United States have been both a success and a failure. It's been a success for those students who need the loans, graduate from the university, secure a job, and are able to pay back the loans, right? But the unfortunate downside of those loans is there are now 40 million students in the United States that started college and never finished college. Most of those students took out a loan. So now you have a student who's taken out a loan, has a big debt. They went to college, they dropped out for whatever reason. They had a family emergency, they couldn't get additional money, they needed additional money, couldn't get it, whatever the case may be, and they dropped out, right? That's a failure of those systems because those students now are more than likely unable to pay back, or if they do pay back, it will be at a substantial financial stress to those students. And so, so talk about intersections. Intersecting the student loan programs with college completion is very important because it's the only way, in my opinion, and I have Dr. Howard talk about this, in my opinion, would be the way to make those programs successful. The US is starting to begin putting some of those policies and regulations in place, but it's been slow and it's come with challenges. And the program you just mentioned about student loan forgiveness has now been challenged in the courts and may or may not be implemented. There's been some delay on some of that. So, and it doesn't cover all student loans. It only covers those student loans that were federally guaranteed, which is a smaller percentage of the loan lending that goes on in the United States. But I know you've got some thinking of that.
Yeah, you know, part of it, I hate to sound like a broken record, but going back to the idea of inclusive excellence at scale, it's thinking that when you bring someone into an institution, you have a moral obligation for them to get through it and to graduate. It could be financially horrific for them, Rick, as you pointed out, and for their families, and for their posterity if they don't. It's also bad business. It's bad for the United States of America. It's bad, full stop. So it used to be an idiom. I don't know if you would, in Hungary, you would all say this. So when I went to the Air Force Academy in 1987, I remember with 1,000 cadets, and these are, if you know about West Point and Navy and Air Force, these are pretty, you know, quote-unquote elite places in terms of being able to get in. And I remember the commandant of the academy having us all stand up. He said, look to your right, look to your left. One of you won't be here in the next 4 years. And I said, I'm going to be here. Maybe Zoltán won't be here, but I'm going to be here, I promise you. And the attrition rate was about 30%. But the thing about it is they said similar things at MIT. They said similar things at Berkeley. They said the same thing at Stanford. The idea was bring you in. First off, you know, very hard to get in, and then once you get in, you're on your own, figure it out, whatever. And I'm not saying there's not a place for rigor and some grit, but having said that, the mindset now is that we brought you in, let's meet you where you are to get you where you need to go. And, you know, Michael tells, I'll just do a quick story. Michael Crow always talks about, well, if you study chemistry, most people think that, you know, chemistry professors think that their chemistry students think like them and learn like them and understand like them, and it's not the case. They don't. Most students don't think like professors. No offense to the professors out there. But professors teach to everyone like they think they're teaching to themselves. But what if you wanted to change that and meet students where they were? So let me jump over, we're doing it in chemistry, but let me jump over to biology real quick. So in biology, what we've done is, we met with a guy named Walter Parks. Walter Parks is Steven Spielberg's best friend. Walter Parks is a filmmaker who did the movie Gladiator, Men in Black, War Games, many others. And he and Steven Spielberg created this virtual reality thing, entity called the Alien Zoo, where you go into virtual reality goggles, thinking about technology and the future of education, go into this alien zoo and this sort of, it's like an amusement park ride, but you're going in and seeing these sort of cool animals that you've never heard of on another faraway planet. Michael Crow saw that and said, you don't just have a toy or a game or an adventure, you have the future of education. So we took that technology during COVID, worked with our outstanding faculty in biology, because as I said in my talk, we're not replacing faculty, but rather augmenting them and making them better. And we created, rather than doing your lab as a wet lab where you'd be cutting open frogs and worms, etc., you go into this alien zoo and you learn how to take care of these sick animals. Ladies and gentlemen, we put about 20,000 students through this alien zoo. And we're getting remarkable uplift in terms of grades. Students that typically made B's are making A's, people that made C's are making B's, etc. So we are revolutionizing education by saying, hey, student, going into this virtual reality, which feels like going into a movie where you can't text and play on your phone or whatever, you can be really engaged, you can get actually better outcomes. And I think that's part of a continuum of how we get to graduation, not just showing up.
I've been to the Alien Zoo, and it's fantastic.
Did you like it?
Fantastic.
And you escaped.
Yes, alive. One comment about financing, and I think it's, again, about the great combination of forces with the Budapest Metropolitan University and ASU, is that if there's a student, could it be Hungarian or international student that joins METU, and if you want to basically optimize your school fees, you can actually start and run a course, take a course for your bachelor's degree at METU, and then continue your master's degree at ASU. And this is why you can actually optimize the spending you do. And also you can gradually shift towards ASU and maybe just spend the very last year of your time in Arizona at the university, and you can combine Metropolitan and online courses in the meantime. So I think we can be a really good gateway of receiving, maybe for visa purposes, Asian students here in Budapest, and then help them to get a degree with the knowledge of the Arizona State University. And maybe if the visa issue can be sorted out, then you can do the physical course later on and finish your master's degree or doctoral degree in Arizona. So I think this gives us a unique opportunity of not only sending students to Arizona, but receiving students also from all around the world. And Budapest, as you have mentioned, is a great place to study.
We talked about the student loan system, that for those, the situation is very difficult to fail, so the drop out from the universities. And in Hungary, there are a lot of programs on university level and even on government level to reduce this dropout rate. Is there any special mentoring or program inside ASU or the partner universities all over the world to reduce the dropout rate? This is a hot topic here in Hungary currently.
Yeah, let me start, Chris, I'll turn it to you. So before Chris's time at Arizona State University, I started at Arizona State University in 2004. In 2004, the 6-year completion rate for an undergraduate degree, 6-year completion rate, was 45%. Only 45% of students that started at ASU completed a degree within 6 years, not 4 years, 6 years. It was awful, disastrous, ridiculous, you know. It's not a good number, right? So ASU went on a campaign to say, how do we improve retention? And retention is important for all sorts of reasons, but since we have economists and others in the room, retention is important because if you can retain a student, it's a lot cheaper than having to recruit a student, a new student, right? I mean, and we see this in business, obviously, too, but it's the same in the university, right? So there was a 20-point program that put it in place. I can't go through all of them, but the feature of it gets back to what Dr. Howard was talking about, which is as students go through their learning experience, everybody's not the same. You can't treat them the same. And I'll give you an example for math. So the way I learned math was you sat in a classroom and the teacher got up and assumed everybody learned math at the same rate, right? Of course, that's not the case, right? Some people pick up math in a second, others struggle with math, right? So one of the pain points for students dropping out of ASU and across the United States, and I'm sure across the world, is they fail math because they're not given good math training in their high school years or earlier. So ASU put in place a individualized math program that allows students to gain skills in math. If you gain those skills in math and can demonstrate those skills, you can go through your first-year math course or first-year calculus course and be done in 2 weeks. Or if you need more time, it takes you through the skills, and then if you're not learning that skills, it brings you back to the prior skill that's necessary to learn that future skill, and it begins to individualize your math training. And it may take you 16 weeks to get through calculus, but nevertheless, the dropout rate for calculus at ASU when I started in 2004 was almost 30–40% of students taking intro calculus dropped out and never returned to the university because they couldn't get through that required course at the university. Now the dropout rate is like 3%. I mean, it's an incredible improvement in how you think about teaching, pedagogy, how you think about implementing programs, and then, but back to the root of your question, how do you make sure you retain students over time? And Chris, I know you.
Yeah, so it's a mindset, and it's a maniacal commitment to leveraging technology to get the outcomes you want. So, you know, Rick, what you started 20 years ago, it's every single day we think the same thing. In fact, there's plenty of meetings where Michael will get downright ornery, I don't use that word in Hungary, ornery, mean about what are we doing to that student who fell out of that class and he or she is so ashamed they go home and they don't even go to a different major, they just leave. And then we get to the conundrum you just talked about. So we have something called the Learning Action Lab and Learning Engineering Institute, where we spend all of our time thinking about what do you need to get from here to learn and to assess, rinse and repeat in every course over and over. What are the big points where students are failing the grades, or they're withdrawing or getting incomplete? If you listen to the data, it will tell you something. It will tell you something. And then you start putting mechanism around there, which include great tutorial services. The students that do, the 100,000 students that are online, I mean, obviously, they can't pop into their advisor's office for office hours and get help. But they complete at very high rates. And in fact, for our 25,000 students from Starbucks that take our courses online, when they come and graduate, they don't all come, but the ones that do come, we'll have a session with the CEO of Starbucks, whoever that is at the time. No, that's a bad joke. The head of the CEO and Michael and the other senior leaders and the families, and we'll have them talk about their experiences. And all of them, almost to a person, will say, my success coach. The success coach is someone who uses technology and heart and empathy at scale, at a distance, to help students get to and through. So we have these mechanisms on campus, off campus, but I think it goes back to the mindset.
So we can summarize that with the dropout rate, we can put one more first position on your chart repeatedly ranked #1, the lowest dropout rate in the US or in the world, because this 3% is truly amazing. So I never, to tell the truth, I never heard about this number as a dropout rate. And we heard about the starting point 20 years ago. So it's an amazing success. So my last question is about, we have a few more minutes left. There is no panel currently without talking about AI. I'm not an AI expert, but usually we are talking about either to regulate or not regulate. Student union asking the government to regulate AI. Universities sometimes also proposing the same. What is your opinion about it? Should we regulate or non-regulate, not regulate it inside the university world? And what are there any we are talking about mainly the advantages. Are there any disadvantages or risks in using AI? We know that there are risks. If you do not use it, maybe you will lose your job.
Yeah, so AI, if it's not the Gutenberg printing press or Prometheus getting fire from the gods, it's something like that. It's a very, very powerful tool. Why? Because it's simple. You don't have to code. You don't have to be a STEM person to leverage this. So it is extraordinary. And it does need regulation. I'm actually been appointed by the Secretary of Commerce to be on a large council that's looking at how we're going to regulate it. It cannot, like pharmaceutical drugs, there needs to be a regulatory framework. And we need to make sure it's democratized and not so bureaucratized that it can't be used as a force for good, that it cannot be used for innovation and entrepreneurship. At Arizona State University, what we've decided to do is not be afraid of it, first and foremost. We have put in frameworks with our faculty around teaching and learning. And by the way, people talk about cheating with AI. People cheated before there was AI. Your students are cheating in your classes just like they were cheating in my classes well before AI, ChatGPT got out there. So let's recognize that. It's just a different type of cheating. So we understand that, and we have good protocol and governance around that. But what we're more excited about is, what do you do with this? How do you make it better? And I'll just say one quick thing. I know we're getting to the last minute here. In that Dreamscape Learn virtual reality, the Alien Zoo, which you did, which by the way, now we have chemistry, we're doing art history, we're doing astronomy, it's going on and it never stops. We're putting an AI avatar co-pilot in there with you. So you can ask questions in the Alien Zoo about this animal's heart rate, and it'll answer, but it only answer based on what you've learned in the module up to that point. It won't get ahead. Can you imagine how powerful that is? AR, VR, along with AI. So again, regulation does matter, but imagination, I think, matters almost a bit more.
I have to agree completely. We are very lucky because at the Budapest Metropolitan University, we just started a new AI department with the leadership of Fajkis Péter. He's somewhere here in the road. And based on the output of the first semester of the Hungarian Innovation Hub, our first best teams all based their idea on AI. It's already here, so we don't even have to talk about it, whether we like it. It's here. It's a tool, and we have to tame it, of course. We have to regulate it in a way that we are really using the benefits of that. But it's here, and the Generation Z and Alpha are using it big time. Maybe we are a little bit behind, I don't know, but it's already here. So we just have to make sure that we teach the kids critical thinking, what's real, what's not real, and how we can use it for the benefit of others.
Dear President, dear Ambassador, I'd like to thank you for your contribution, taking part in this panel, and I'd like to ask the audience that we still have a few minutes left until lunchtime. If you have any questions or comments, you can raise your hand and ask it. If you don't have, I will continue, but it's better to pass the word for you. Please. The microphone is arriving.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all these wonderful ideas about education. I just have a quick question because, Dr. Howard, you mentioned imagination at the end, and also you were talking a lot about innovation, and I assume that takes a lot of risk. So can you give us a few examples from the past when you started something, you took the risk, and it was either success or the opposite, and how you handled it? Thank you.
Well, we're taking a risk with the Cintana idea. It's working out okay. You know, so many situations. I mean, I've had examples, and even as an educator. But what is interesting about ASU is that, you know, Michael always says, we're going to launch 1,000 ships. Maybe 1 or 2 are going to get through. We just have no idea which 2. So the mindset is that. And if you go back and look at how ASU has built on those, because that's the other part of your question is, you took the risk, it didn't go well, but what did you learn? That's just what entrepreneurs do and venture capitalists do. And by the way, when venture capitalists are going to entrepreneurs, the first thing they want to do is hear about all the ways you failed, right? And so they can figure out how you're going to do better in the future. But for example, now we have something called the Global Futures Laboratory. It's 4 schools and a series of other alliances we have led by a guy named Peter Schlosser, a brilliant physicist and climate guy out of Columbia who now works at ASU, thinking about the future of our world and our species. That started off as something, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago. School sustainability goes back 20 years, but there are fits and starts where we try to launch things in there. I heard this lecture recently from Michael and gave his presentation, and you might have been there. You might have been the guy that failed along the way, actually.
I ran that place.
You ran that place, yeah. So there was like plenty of times where we thought it was A and it just failed. You know, we thought it was B, then we didn't fail. And then ultimately we got to this thing, the Global Futures Lab, which we think is really going to be something special. So again, myriad examples out there throughout, again, my time personally, but at ASU, but we're pretty good at going back and taking a look and saying, well, how can we make it better? How can we improve from that? And I've gotten to, we have something, for example, called the University Design Institute, which thinks about how do you design the modern university. And I think half of the lessons there are what you do wrong, and the other part of it is what you learn from what you did wrong.
Yeah, just to build on that, I think about risk in 2 ways. First way I think about risk is people risk. I think the biggest challenge in my mind is when you hire somebody, you're taking a risk on that person. And generally, you hope they work out. Sometimes they don't. The biggest challenge we have in large organizations is taking action on those kind of failures. Because once you bring somebody on board, it's very hard, both emotionally and even from a legal standpoint to let that person go. But I think that one of the big challenges we've had at ASU is sometimes we hang on to people that we know we made a mistake on, but for whatever reason we hang on to them for too long. I think most large organizations, small organizations do the same thing. So the second thing is, in addition to people risk, there's project risk, which is what Dr. Howard was talking about. But there's also sort of a strategy risk. And the strategy risk is at this much higher level, which is it's above the project risk. It obviously involves people, but making a wrong decision strategically about how you advance an organization. And ASU has had some strategy challenges because the president, Michael Crow, has a lot of different strategies he throws out there. And so I think there's that strategic risk issue that has to be addressed also. Happy to give you some examples. Well, I'll give you one example. President Crow is very connected to the defense community in the United States. And he was really eager to put a strategy in place where ASU would be deeply connected to the defense community, and doing that by creating a separate not-for-profit entity that would serve as a liaison between the university and the defense community. That has pretty much been a failure. Yeah. Just honestly, right? And it was a good thought strategically, but it's very complicated for university faculty members to work in the defense community, to get the clearances necessary to work in the defense industry, to take that model of thinking, it's contract work, it's not grant. Where you don't get a grant, you have to get a contract. If you don't deliver, they take the money back from you. The university professors don't want anybody to take their money back. So that has been a strategic failure, but one that was a good idea from the beginning, just didn't work.
Thanks. One more question. If there is no question, I just have one. Does that mean that also you talked about how to select people, how to select leaders, executives, as that means that the dropout rate in the leadership of the Cintana and ASO also quite low?
No, I'll start because I was at ASU before Dr. Howard got there. From 2002, when President Crow came in, until about 2008, every single dean, there were 18 deans have been fired and new ones brought in, right? So you got to think about the dropout rate, about who drops out because they want to drop out and who drops out because they're told to drop out, right? And so what President Crow did, again, from a people perspective, said these are people that don't have the right mindset for a accessible, excellent university, and made a lot of those changes, right? So I think in ASU you find now today there's a very low rate of attrition in terms of employees, because everybody's been brought into that mindset from the beginning. There's been turnover obviously in professors, staff, and so forth, and so there's very low turnover.
That's a great point. We'd say a self-fulfilling prophecy. So the people that are attracted to the institution, almost to a person, let's say the senior 50 people, all say it was the charter, all want to come and be in our Marvel universe of people that are sort of like-minded. They sort of committed themselves to sort of that approach. Now, the next big thing, ASU, there's always something going on. We don't have a medical school, but now we're building a medical school. But it won't be a normal medical school. It's under this auspice of this thing called ASU Health, where we're trying to raise the health outcomes of Arizonans in the United States and global citizens everywhere. So instead of doing just a medical school, we're going to do a medical engineering school. So students will come in, and after 4 years, the same time you do medical school, they'll get a Master of Science in Engineering, focusing on innovation and AI, and a medical degree, studying the heart as an engineer, a biomedical engineer, and as a physiologist as well. As we talk about who we want to bring in to run that, to be the dean of our new School of Technology and Public Health, the first thing we say is, if they come in and even ask certain questions that are very, very traditional and routinized, that's a red flag. Can't hire them. It just won't work, because we're going to be different. The medical school is going to draw heavily from the faculty that's already in place. It's going to be much more distributed. It's going to be much more innovative. So we just can't have somebody that sort of sees the world the same way that everybody else sees it. So we get more of that. And what we're finding, and I'll stop here, I know we're getting late on time, is that there's a lot of people across the globe that really, really want to innovate for good and think differently and use imagination to make the world a better place.
Dear President, dear Ambassador, I'd like to thank you for your contribution. And for the audience, we will have a lunchtime, so bon appetit for the lunch. And we will continue our program tomorrow at METU. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.